Tak perlu Umi cancel, Umi buat kat luar.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Is everyone able to view me and can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, all right. So we're going to start the session for today, yeah? Okay, all right. All right, okay. Salam sejahtera and a very good morning to Yang Berbahagia Dr. Rohana binti Johan, the Director of Hospital Kuala Lumpur, Dr. Haja Salina Abdul Aziz, the Head of Department of Psychiatry and Mental Health Department of Hospital Kuala Lumpur, and the Head of Psychiatry Services Ministry of Health Malaysia, or to all the consultants present here today, specialists, and also to all fellow healthcare workers, yeah? Okay, my name is Dr. Divya and I will be moderating for this morning. So we are all gathered here today on this lovely Saturday morning for the webinar on ending burnout in healthcare workers in conjunction with World Mental Health Day 2021. And this webinar would also be streaming live on YouTube. So the presenters for this morning are Dr. Muhammad Hafiz, Datuk Dr. Alzamani Idrus, and Dr. Kit Tai Su Kiat. All right. Okay. Sebelum kita mula, there are a few rules that I would like to just remind everybody present here today. Yeah. So there are a few housekeeping reminders throughout the session today. Number one, please keep your mics muted and your video switched off throughout the presentations. Number two, if you have any questions for the presenters, please type them into the chat box and we will attend to your questions at the end of each presentation, provided we have sufficient time. Yeah, and earlier on, we realized that some of y'all were raising your hands. Please, if you have any questions, any comments, suggestions, please put it in the chat box so we would be able to attend to that later lah. Okay, and only for Zoom registered participants, they will be receiving the e-certificate and MyCPD points, whereby a QR code will be displayed at the end of the webinar itself. The e-cert will be emailed to you within the next 2 weeks. And do remember to fill in the feedback survey at the end of the webinar today. All right. With that, now let's please welcome Dr. Haja Salina Abdul Aziz, the Head of Department of Psychiatry and Mental Health of Department, Hospital Kuala Lumpur, to give her welcoming speech for today's event. We welcome Dr. Salina.
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, hold on. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Selamat pagi. Good morning to everyone on this beautiful Saturday morning. Warm welcome to all the participants of the Ending Burnout in Healthcare Workers webinar. This is in conjunction with the World Mental Health Day 2021. This webinar is specially organized by the Department of Psychiatry, HKL, for our healthcare workers to help them fight burnout. Okay. To raise awareness of mental health issues globally and mobilize effort around it, World Mental Health Day is observed on the 10th of October every year. So, but we are now doing on the because of the tight schedule that we had and the many department that has celebrated the World Mental Health Day. So we ended up this year doing a bit late. Okay. So the theme for the mental health care is mental health care for all. Let's make it a reality, which has been translated by KKM menuju keseksama kesihatan mental. This is the WHO theme for the World Mental Health for 2021. So this year theme actually highlight the urgency to make quality mental health care a reality for everyone. It has been 18 months since the start of a COVID-19 pandemic. We are still struggling to return to a semblance of normality. A lot of bereavement, isolation, loss of income, and fear have triggered mental health conditions or exacerbate existing one. The COVID-19 pandemic has placed unprecedented pressure on healthcare systems and workers around the world. Such pressure may impact on working conditions, psychological well-being, and perception of safety. Frontliners, students, and people living alone has been most affected. Today, actually, we are focusing on the healthcare worker. We need to address the mental health of our healthcare worker, as the impact of COVID-19 pandemic has led to a significant emotional distress among them. Until date, we are still battling this pandemic with various challenges. Burnout is an occupational hazard in healthcare, which harms the healthcare system, okay, the patient, and also the healthcare worker. So in COVID-19 pandemic, burnout has increased to a level that poses a threat to maintaining a functioning healthcare workforce. Okay, so it has gone to the extent that it threatens our healthcare workforce to an extent. A local study done by Roslan et al., published January 17, titled Burnout Prevalence and its Associated Factors among Malaysian Healthcare Workers during the COVID-19 pandemic, found that it involves 893 healthcare workers, shows that the prevalence of personal, work, and patient-related burnout was about 53.8%, 39.1% in work burnout, and patient-related burnout 17.4% respectively. Between May 28 and October 1st, 2020, the American Medical Association did a study on coping with COVID for caregivers survey in 42 healthcare organizations across US, assessing their workers' stress during the pandemic. What did they found? The survey, which was done by 20,947 physicians and other workers, they found that 61% of those surveyed felt high pressure of exposing themselves or their family to COVID-19, while 38% self-reported experiencing anxiety and depression. Another 43% suffered from work overload, and 49% had burnout. That's quite a high number, 49% had burnout. So factors that triggers burnout are high workload, uncertainties caused by the pandemic, challenging work-family balance, stretched workplace relationship, disrupted career plans, the changes and the adaptation to the process of various standard operating procedures that we have. Due to the unprecedented nature of the COVID, healthcare workers are also struggling with the lack of control over the situation that they're facing. They have a higher burnout rate than the general working population because confronting human pain and suffering is hard for everyone. So, but this healthcare worker having to do this regularly, it can be a huge emotional burden on them. In addition to the psychological weight of the job, many healthcare workers have increasing administrative duty and long hours contributing to burnout. We understand that some during the COVID pandemic, when it was at its peak, when we do not have enough manpowers, a lot of the nurses and doctors have to work from 8 hours to 12 hours. A study of working adult found healthcare professionals having among the highest level of insufficient sleep. Yeah? Healthcare professional regularly got less than 7 hours of sleep. And this is partly due to the night shift, which disrupt your biological rhythm of sleep and wake cycle. And this can accelerate your mental exhaustion, which later leads to a vicious cycle actually. So our healthcare workers has experienced substantial increase in burnout during the COVID-19 pandemic. Sustained burnout will likely contribute to staff retention challenge due to the healthcare providers leaving their workplace and profession. A vicious cycle may be underway where understaffing lead to increased burnout and even weaker healthcare workforce. The pandemic has created a new challenge for maintaining health wellness in our healthcare workers, and ongoing shortage in the behavioral health workforce make it difficult to meet the ongoing and the increased need for mental health care. As we strive to make mental wellness and mental health care a reality for all, we are blessed to have NGOs like Mercy that continue to support our traditional mental health care providers and play important role in providing services for the mental health well-being of the healthcare worker, school and communities. We all play a role in making mental health a reality for all. Due to this, I believe this webinar is timely organized to help address the issue of the burnout and the stress among our frontliners, particularly healthcare workers in Malaysia, by providing our participants with the knowledge and effective methods of overcoming stress. We are fortunate enough to have a list of distinguished and well-known speakers to join this webinar. I want to thank the honorable speakers for their time and knowledge sharing during this webinar. I also like to congratulate the organizing committee for their tremendous effort in planning this webinar, not forgetting the support from Badan Kebajikan Psychiatry HKL and Mercy Malaysia for their contribution. Dengan lafaz Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I would like to officiate the opening of this Ending Burnout in Healthcare Worker National Webinar 2021. And I wish all the participants a fruitful learning experience. Thank you. Have a good day ahead. Assalamualaikum.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Salina, for your welcoming speech and also for officiating the webinar for today. And also thank you for your continuous support, especially when it comes to the event today. Okay, we're a bit ahead of time. Dr. Hafiz, would you like to proceed with the first presentation?
Yes, of course, Divya. I have no issue if you can start early.
Okay, all right. All right, so without further ado, let's please welcome our first presenter for today, Dr. Muhammad Hafiz Norsan, a qualified psychiatrist with 10 years background, specialty in the psychiatric field with multiple achievements, such as the second prize winner in the Malaysian Psychiatric Association Best Practice Award 2016, at the 20th Malaysian Conference of Psychological Medicine. He has also contributed in multiple events, namely a contributor to post-COVID-19 management protocols, first edition 2021 under the Ministry of Health, and holder of numerous department portfolios. So let us please welcome Dr. Muhammad Hafiz to present his topic on what is burnout.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Divya, for your kind introduction. Good morning, Assalamualaikum, and a very good morning to Dr. Haja Salina, to the organizing committee, and Dr. Rohana, and then of course to all of you, the participants that take your use your time during weekend to learn something today about, especially about burnout. So I hope I'll be presenting the topic of what is burnout. So hopefully I can share with you some knowledge about what is burnout, how we can what are the features, how we can detect, and of course in the next session other speaker will talk about how we can deal and how we can treat burnout. Okay, so without further ado, I will share my PowerPoint slide. Okay, I hope everyone can see the slide. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier just now, my topic will be about what is burnout lah, or burnout syndrome. Okay, for the outline of my presentation, what we will learn today is, first we will learn about, in this slide, hopefully at the end of the session we will learn what is burnout, and I'll share with you a brief story about a burnout syndrome study, and what are the features of burnout syndrome, some statistics on burnout, and what are the factors associated with burnout, and how does burnout impact on the healthcare worker, and then how we can do how to do screening to look for burnout syndrome. Okay, but before we start our topic on burnout, I would like to share with you some important definition or terms. First is, what is health? Okay, so of course, if you look into reference talking about the definition of health, I guess you can find various definition of health in the internet or online or in the books, but I'll take this definition from the WHO. So a good health is defined as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of the disease of infirmity. Okay, so usually we always associate health with only physical health, but as you can see, the criteria for us to say we have a good health is actually wider than that. Okay, more holistic. So for us to be able to say we have a good health, as per WHO definition, we should not have problem, either physical, mental, or our social well-being. Okay, then what is mental health? Okay, it's like a bit more or less the same, but slightly different. Focus more on the psychological part of it. Also, this is definition I took from WHO. So mental health is defined. A good mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to contribute to his or her own community. So as you can see, based on this definition, there are several criteria or checklists that we have to tick. And if based on this definition, if you, the participant, thinks that you're able to tick all this checkbox, the good news is you have what we call a good mental health. Okay, now let's go into the big topic. Okay, so we start with, what is a burnout syndrome? Okay, burnout syndrome is basically, it's not a medical condition as per ICD-10. Okay, ICD stands for International Classification of Diseases. Okay, so burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Okay, so burnout has been defined, again, as you can see, it's not a medical condition, but rather an occupational phenomenon. Okay, so a brief story on burnout syndrome study. So for my reading and research, it seems that this is the person who coined the word, make famous the word burnout. Okay, this person's name is Herbert J. Freudenberger. He was a German-born psychologist and one of the pioneers in starting the study on burnout. Okay, he also, back in 1980, he published a book titled Burnout: The High Cost of High Achievement, which that talk about chronic fatigue, and this book has become a standard reference for the phenomenon. And from my extra reading, it seems that Mr. Freudenberger himself with his colleague actually experienced burnout while they are running addiction clinic in the US. So he passed away in 1999. Okay, so what is the definition by Freudenberger himself? He defined burnout as a state of mental and physical exhaustion caused by one professional life. So very similar, not too far, more or less similar dengan the ICD-10. Okay, so now we know the concept of burnout syndrome. So what are the features of burnout syndrome? Okay, as per ICD-10, as per ICD-11, burnout syndrome is characterized if you suffer from burnout syndrome. Usually it characterized by 3 dimensions. The first one is you experience feeling of energy depletion or exhaustion. Okay, and then second, you start having this increased mental distance from your job, or you start feeling negative or cynic towards your job. Probably when you don't have burnout, you probably really like your job, you're really motivated every time you come to your workplace. But if you started to experience burnout syndrome, you start feeling more distant from your job, and you don't really enjoy it anymore. And of course, the combination of factors number 1 and 2 will lead to the reductions of the professional efficacy, okay, the quality of our work. Okay, what are the other signs and symptoms of burnout? This extra information I got from Dr. David Ballard from American Psychological Association when he had his interview with Forbes magazine talking about burnout. So the other symptoms, the first one is the cognitive problem. So usually people who suffer from burnout will have some dysfunction in their cognitive problem. For example, they feel that in terms of memory, in terms of concentration, they're no longer able to focus, and their ability to think, to do a good decision making also become impaired over time. And then second, people who have burnout syndrome usually can have interpersonal problem at workplace or at home. And also people who already burnt out will start neglecting their themselves. They don't care about their meal time, their hygiene, and eventually they will start having health problems. It's quite common juga for people who have burnout syndrome to experience some somatic complaint. For example, digestive issue. Eventually some of them develop heart disease, maybe angina or acute coronary syndrome, and then obesity, usually probably from the poor coping mechanism such as binge eating, and not to forget also severe psychological conditions such as major depression. Okay, so as we all know now, Herbert Freudenberger in his study with his colleague about burnout, they come out with this concept of 12 stages of burnout. So there's according to this concept, there's a phases that you will need to go through before you eventually experience a full-blown burnout syndrome. But this is not the only concept talking about stages of burnout. There are another few more concepts. What I can recall would be the 5 stages of burnout by, if I'm not mistaken, Wichita University. The researcher there also, they come out with stages of burnout, more akin to the stage of grief by Kubler-Ross. Okay, so for these 12 stages of burnout, as introduced by Freudenberger and his colleague, the first phase would be those who suffer from burnout syndrome. Usually we start as a person who have excessive drive or ambition. This is quite common for people who just started their job, okay, or just undertaking a new task or a novel task. So basically at the beginning, the level of motivation is high. We plan to achieve the best result possible. So this will be the first step, the first stage. And then the second stage, because we have this high level of drive or high level of motivation or ambition, we will start pushing ourselves to work harder. Okay, so this is quite common, even for regardless what type of job we are doing. And then, but then, because of those two, in order for us to really achieve what we want, our high level of expectation that we have towards our job and also towards ourselves, we start neglecting our own needs. Okay, in this stage, we will start to sacrifice our self-care. For example, our sleep. We don't do exercise anymore, and probably we don't eat well anymore. And then we go into the fourth stage, the displacements of conflict. In this stage, instead of acknowledging that you are pushing yourself to the max, you start blaming others for the trouble that you're having. We're going to blame your boss, you're going to blame the demands of your job, and you probably also will blame your colleague. Okay. And then stage 5, that person will find out that they no longer give time for a non-work related needs. Example, you will start begin to withdraw from your family and friends, and activities such as social invitation for parties, movies, or dinner will start appear to be burdensome instead of enjoyable. And in the 6th stage, we will start being in denial. That person, that burnout person, with features such as they start being impatient with those around them, increasing in intensity. And then second, instead of taking responsibility for their own behavior, again they start blaming others and start accusing others for being bad things such as being incompetent, being lazy, or overbearing. And then in the 7th stage, you will start becoming withdrawal. You will going to withdraw yourself from your family and friends, and you will start withdraw yourself from all the social activities such as party, going out for a movie, or going out for dinner. And then in the 8th stage, you start showing behavioral changes. Okay, so those on the road to the burnout may become more aggressive and snap at loved one for no reason. Okay, so as you can see, from over ambition, and now when the burnout start kicking in, the condition deteriorate, and you will start becoming someone yang you are not, that is not your own personality. And then in the 9th stage, person might experience depersonalization, where they start feeling detached from their life and their own ability to control their life. Okay. And then in the 10th stage, they start experiencing inner emptiness or anxiety. Either they're feeling empty or anxious, and they may turn to thrill-seeking behavior to cope with this negative emotion, such as substance abuse, gambling, or overeating. And in the 11th stage, they probably succumb to the domains of depression, where they start feeling, their life lost its meaning, and they start feeling hopeless or probably also useless. And in the end, they will suffer a full-blown burnout syndrome, where their mental or their physical collapse. So basically, once you reach this stage, Freudenberger and his colleagues stated that probably your ability to cope is out, and probably you will going to need some either medical attention or maybe mental health attention, okay, to pull you back from burnout and save you. All right. Statistic. Okay, now we go into statistic on burnout syndrome. Among Malaysian healthcare worker. Okay. just now during the opening speech by Dr. Salina, I think she quote this study by Shazni Nurhani Shazni and colleague. This the what kind apa tu? This is one of the limited study on burnout done on Malaysian healthcare worker, but with a good numbers of sample. Okay, they are interviewed, they assess almost 900 plus of participants, and like Dr. Salina mentioned just now, the prevalence of burnout among Malaysian healthcare worker is alarming. Okay, as you can see, the numbers is very high, at least half, half of them, more than half experience personal burnout, 40% experience work-related burnout, and almost close to 18% experience patient-related or client-related burnout. Okay, but beside that, if you look for prevalence among prevalence of burnout among healthcare worker, you can see that all over the world, wherever this kind of study took place, whether it is in America or Asia or in India or in Japan, the result all show that the numbers of burnout among healthcare workers amid COVID-19 pandemic is higher compared to the prevalence before the pandemic happened. Okay, so what are the associated factors associated with burnout among Malaysian healthcare workers? So, study by Dr. Luke from UKM, published in 2020, found that among the associated factors are first, management and professional position. So, as you can see, that again in the opening speech by Dr. Salina, because of pandemic-19, COVID pandemic, it's not only we have increased number in terms of our workload. Some of us need to take extra role, need to handle other stuff, in order to help patient, and probably other healthcare worker to recover from the impact of COVID-19, and this will start taking toll to their own mental health. They start feeling mentally exhausted. Okay, especially on the higher up, the expectation by the superior, by the public is high. As you can see, during pandemic, any leader can be easily blamed if they make even one mistake. Okay. Second is financial problem. As we know, a lot of Malaysians lost their job. Maybe probably thankful as a government servant, we still have our job, but nonetheless, we also impacted by the bad effect of pandemic towards our economy that lead us to have a financial problem. And probably if we ourselves don't have financial problem, probably our spouse, who probably not a government servant, he or she might lose their job, and our financial stability become impaired, and this also will lead to mental health conditions such as psychological distress or burnout. And usually people who experience burnout appear to have problem with the colleague before the burnout started, or maybe during the burnout phase also. Okay, so what are the risk factors for burnout syndrome? What are the factors that make us, if we have it, vulnerable to burnout? Okay, this is a generic study looking into risk factor for burnout. This study is by Ademir, published back in 2013. You can see in this study, the researcher found out factors that can be divided into two: the individual and environmental factor. Individual factor are, for example, personality trait, especially neuroticism, and those who are perfectionists, people who are at younger age, being single, and having education regardless whether it's high or low. This factor appear to increase the risk for a person to develop or to suffer from burnout syndrome. And looking into the environmental factor, you can see, I believe we can all relate. When you read the environmental factor, we all can relate to it. We all can understand that this factor definitely can lead to burnout. Factors such as work overload, a lack of control, lack of fairness, insufficient reward, job insecurity, and overcrowding and noisy workplace. Okay, but what are the predictor? What are the risk factors associated with burnout syndrome, of course, among healthcare workers during this COVID-19 pandemic? Is there any slightly different? Okay, based on study by Morgantini et al., published back in 2020, these are among the factors to be found associated with increased risk to develop burnout among healthcare workers. Factors such as work impacting household activity. When your work starts affecting your household activity, probably you have to do lots of work. You take into we take Malaysia as an example. Because of COVID-19 pandemic, school are closed, and then children have to undergo PDPR. So usually, in the normal time, as a parent who works somewhere else, we can feel at peace. When you send your kids to school, the teacher will take care of them, and then we teach them. That for PDPR, you started to have to also involve in their study. Make sure sometimes some parent might have to take leave to sit next to their children to monitor them, to make them focus. So all this extra work, and this can increase workload, hence lead to burnout. Second, feeling pushed beyond training. Okay. So again, this all lead to factors such as physical or mental exhaustion. We all have our own threshold. And then third, exposure to COVID patient, because especially in the beginning, because we don't know what is COVID-19 coronavirus going to react. Like, is it really dangerous? Of course, it is dangerous, but at that time, there's a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty for human will always lead to anxiety. Okay, and then fourth factor would be making life prioritizing decision. Sometimes, for example, the example I can think of, our colleague who work in ICU, who deal with severe cases of COVID, and then with the mounting numbers of patients that require bed in ICU, and then with the different prognosis that come with the patient, they have to make hard decision in deciding who will get that ICU bed, who's going to get that opportunity to get that ventilator support. So facing this kind of situation, one day itself is already teruk. Imagine if you have to experience it day by day basis. So of course, this will start taking toll on your mental health. All right, so what are the negative impact of burnout on healthcare workers? Okay, so according to the study by West et al., this is published back in 2018. So once you, a healthcare worker experiencing burnout, whether you are a doctor or nurses, these are the things that can happen, that can expose you to, First would be it will lower the quality of care provided by you. Okay. Second, there's an increase in medical errors. Third, reduce the physician productivity. And then fourth, the physician started to coping with illicit substance. And then there's an increased rate of suicide among physicians, and also increased rate in motor vehicle crashes. As we learned about the features of burnout, it's not only, although it's not a medical condition, but you can see people who suffer from burnout not only mentally exhausted, but as you know, the body-mind relationship, if your mind or your brain is tired, it can also affect your physical and vice versa. Of course, so it can, now tadi I share juga macam impact concentration. So of course, if you dah so tired in driving, going back home, and you cannot focus on the road, of course, it will increase the risk for you to involve in an MVA. Okay, but then that's all the negative or risk factor. What are the protective factors against burnout, especially amid this COVID-19 pandemic? Okay, these are the positive factor or the protective factor that I extracted out from several studies. So it seems that the factors that has been found to be protective are, the first is teamwork, second would be perceived social support, third would be having these traits of grit, and then fourth, psychological flexibility, and then fifth, a good level of resiliency, and sixth, adequate PPE. Okay, I'm not surprised with this finding, because when we are doing our MHPSS activities such as group counseling, when we ask about, every time we have session, alhamdulillah, majority of the nurses who attended it, the MAs that attended it, and probably the doctors also, show macam not a good spirit. So we ask them, how do you cope, after almost 2 years handling COVID patient? And the two things that keep coming up regardless of different sessions that we have with different nurses, it would be the first two, the teamwork and the social support. So even if you are vulnerable, psychologically or mentally, but if you have these factors of teamwork and social support, it can, you can survive this current situation. Okay. All right. How do we screen burnout? Okay, among healthcare worker. Okay, fortunately, there are several questionnaires that we can use to screen for burnout, and thankfully also, questionnaires such as Copenhagen burnout inventory, Maslach burnout inventory, and Oldenburg burnout inventory, and all these questionnaires has been translated into Malay version and validated. And the validation study show that the translated version, the Malay version, can be used in Malaysian setting. Of course, you can also use the English version, the original version of this questionnaire for those who probably have no lack of proficiency in Malay language. So majority of study on burnout conducted in Malaysia setting will use one of these translated version. Okay, I just want to share some information, our experience as a group, as a MHPSS HKL group. And for those who don't know, MHPSS stands for Mental Health and Psychosocial Support. Okay, so far since the beginning of the third wave, we have screened more or less 400 plus. 400 plus HKL staff has come forward and answered our online questionnaire Kessler 10 that measure level of stress. And based on their scoring, we found out more or less a bit more than half of them suffer from stress ranging from mild form to the severe form. And then this 200 plus staff, we proceed with individual screening assessment. Majority of it we do it via teleconsultation, but small portion that we believe need individual counseling, we will assess them personally in a face-to-face session. And we found out more or less we estimate almost half of these 200 staff who experience mild to severe stress, experience some degree of burnout syndrome. Okay, and the rest also suffer from multiple degree, from mild form to quite a significant condition, suggestive of either psychological distress, heightened anxiety, and small portion of them experiencing severe depression. And for all the staff who we believe require further and more complete intervention, either by psychiatric doctors or psychologists or counselor, we will refer them for further management if they consented to it. And so far, the return, their response has been good. If we feel that they require further assessment, usually they agree to it, and even some of them actually requested to us to refer them to this relevant third party for further management, further treatment. Okay, so these are the posters that we distribute all over HKL so that they know if let's say they are they're having some psychological or mental health issue related to working during this COVID-19 pandemic, they can always reach us via the number that has been provided. Okay, so before I end the session today, so the take-home message for my session would be: the first, burnout can happen to any of us, regardless of our types of job or our position. Second, we need to be aware of the signs and symptoms of burnout, so we cannot be in denial. But as you can see, in the 12 stages of burnout that I presented earlier, being in denial is one of the phase. And last but not least, if you have burnout, some degree of burnout syndrome or features of burnout syndrome, do not refrain yourself or be shy in seeking help if you need one. Okay, there will always be parties like MHPSS HKL, we have Mercy Malaysia, we have unit counseling, we also have even government already set up a hotline that you can contact them, or if you don't want to contact a government-based organization, we also have NGOs that actively trying to help people out there, Malaysian out there, NGOs such as Malaysia Mental Health Association, NIASA, Befrienders, and so on. Okay. All right. With that, I would like to thank all of you for your attention, and I would like to pass back the floor to the moderator, Dr. Divya.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Hafiz, for all your sharings earlier. It was rather very useful to actually we actually got to know what is burnout syndrome and the different stages, the 12 stages that we have, that we may go through along the way and all that. And also, in fact, you also mentioned on the statistic as well. I think a lot of us can relate, especially when it comes to workload related burnout during this pandemic especially. So thank you so much for sharing. For those of all the participants who have any questions, please put it in the chat box. For now, we have okay, I would like to actually ask you a question, Dr. Hafiz. This is from one of our participants Okay, all right, the questions goes like this. It says, how will you manage when the health worker was diagnosed as MMD? I'm assuming MMD as MDD. Depression, I think. Then she burned out at his workplace and independently sleep without taking medications such as zolpidem, 10 mg OD.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Divya. Thank you to those who asked the question. Of course, again, if you only suffer features of burnout syndrome, if you look into ICD-11, it is not considered as medical conditions But burnout syndrome, especially the full-blown one, of course, has been found to be associated with other form of psychiatric problem, such as severe depression, severe anxiety, and burnout syndrome again can lead you to a bad coping mechanism like drinking excessively, or taking illicit substance, or maybe gambling. So in this case, probably I like to assume that if let's say this staff already suffer or already showing signs and symptoms of severe depression and at the same time burnout, they can go both way. Either patient already who actually already have ongoing depression are easily to get burnout, and people who suffer from a profound burnout syndrome also, if left untreated, can lead to burnout syndrome. And if you are suffering, if you yourself or your colleague or anyone that suffer from this kind of condition, definitely further assessment and proper treatment by professionals such as either psychiatric doctors or counselor or psychologist is a must. Because one of burnout or depression syndrome would be insomnia, difficulty in sleeping. But treating it itself just by taking sleeping pills with zolpidem, it might help, but maybe if it is helpful pun, I'm afraid I scared that the effect will be transient, sekejap je, because we don't deal with the core issue. Sometimes that's why come forward for further assessment is important, because we will assess properly whether to see whether is your condition fulfill or not any form of severe psychiatric condition. And if let's say you fulfill a severe psychiatric condition, we will assess the safety, whether you at that point of time are you still safe to work or not, because we as a healthcare worker, we deal a lot we deal with human life, kan? And sometimes, as you can see just now, the negative in my slide tadi, one of the negative impacts from burnout is increased medical error. So maybe kalau kita tak burn out, we don't have problem with any issue with decision making. Tapi kalau kita dah mentally exhausted, then maybe kita without we realize it, maybe we make a wrong decision, kan, wrong prescription that lead to patient having further problem. So that's why again, further assessment is important, because if let's say you suffer from severe conditions such as severe depression, right now not only we have treatment, effective treatment in the form of psychotherapy, but we have an effective treatment in the form of medication such as antidepressant. Dan kalau you memang ada combination symptoms of depression and anxiety, ini kalau you makan ubat macam antidepressant, if let's say your body responding well to it, not only the depression will be alleviated, but also the anxiety. And improvement of this mental or psychological condition usually will associated also with improvement in the form of physical symptom. Means that you will feel, you can able to sleep easier. And then maybe if let's say you're having some somatic or bodily complaint when you are depressed or anxious or burnt out, kan? This somatic symptom, this somatic complaint also can improve. But again, that's why I said further a proper assessment is important, because we can give you appropriate treatment, and we can give MC if we deem you memang perlu MC, you are not fit to work at this point of time. Okay.
All right, Dr. Hafiz, we have a few more questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Boleh.
All right. Okay, soalan kedua. Okay, all right. This is quite relevant also. I think it's important for a lot of us to know the mechanism to get help as well. Okay, if a healthcare worker suspects they are burnt out, what should they do and how would they go about it?
Okay. Thank you for this very relevant question. For whoever hospital staff that believe themselves experiencing some degree of burnout, then they feel they need help. There are a few ways to approach in seeking help. First, if let's say if your hospital has a psychiatric services and like MHPSS team, usually kan this team macam this group of macam MHPSS, we have a hotline, so you can either contact them maybe to ventilate first, or you can ask them help untuk maybe if let's say you need referral to see, either you want to see psychiatric doctor or you want to see counselor or psychologist. MHPSS group like macam MHPSS can assist you in giving you definitely we will do earlier assessment dululah. Tak adalah macam people approach dan kita bagi referral letter macam candy je kan. We will do early assessment, but we have no problem if you feel that you require further help from professional party, we will refer to you to them. Okay. Other way is kalau you macam, if let's say you have link to a doctor, regardless wherever department you are, the doctor can if let's say kalau you perlu you refer to psychiatrist, psychologist ke, you boleh minta kawan doktor untuk buatkan satu referral letter lah. Then you can use that referral letter to get appointment at the clinic. And sometimes usually depending on hospital sometimes hospital yang ada psychiatric clinic, dia ada walk-in services. Maksudnya macam untuk kes-kes urgent kan, mungkin first time datang, tapi sebab condition of that person memang teruk sangat, tak ada, mungkin kadang-kadang kalau ada opportunity boleh jumpa doktor terus, tak payah tunggu lagi few more weeks for the appointment. What else? Itu kalau macam nak seek treatment within hospital compound. Tapi kalau misalnya malu, maksudnya tak nak ada rekod ke apa kan, you guys boleh approach juga NGO. Banyak NGO yang offer psychological support, macam yang saya tahu Miasa lah, Miasa, MMHA, Befrienders, they all have hotline kan, macam Mercy. Mercy pun ada establish hotline juga untuk healthcare worker, untuk contact them to talk to their psychologist or counselor. So depend, banyak, there are many ways. Kalau you nak jumpa doktor tapi bukan dalam your own hospital pun boleh, you ask juga your colleague, MHPSS or any kawan doktor yang you ada, tuliskan sedikit referral letter, and then you pergi dekat hospital with psychiatric services yang you rasa you nak follow up dekat sana. Biasanya tak ada isu juga.
Okay, faham. Okay, thank you doktor. Doktor nak tanya lagi.
Boleh.
Okay, alright. Alright. So since Dr. Hafiz, you are very much involved with the MHPSS team in HKL, can you please maybe explain to us what are the strategies MHPSS team uses to tackle burnout for healthcare workers who are already experiencing burnout, basically?
Okay, boleh. Thank you Divya for that question. Okay lah, kita dekat MHPSS, we operate using the concept of the 3L, look, listen and link. So although MHPSS ni consists of members yang such as psychiatric doctor, psychologist or counselor kan, tapi kita macam frontliner lah, the first line. Usually depending lah, kita the way we handle burnout. Satu, kita buat kalau from our side, we actively do the screening, tapi still in the form of volunteerism lah. As you can see tadi kan, macam dekat poster MHPSS tu ada QR code that we link to a online questionnaire. So kalau jawab soalan tu nanti dapat score kan, and then that score we go into our database, dan kita akan contact lah that staff. Kalau misalnya kita tengok score dia not that great, and then after that individual assessment tu, then we will decide whether the score really represent dia punya condition atau tak. And kalau betul severe, then we will assess that. During the assessment we have some idea whether is it depression, whether is it burnout or heightened anxiety. Okay, so itu active. Kalau misalnya burnout yang severe, kalau misalnya kita rasa itulah, because kan dia look for person yang nampak stress, listen to their problem, and the last L, link. Maksudnya kalau once MHPSS AJK rasa from our assessment, alamak ini memang beyond MHPSS punya scope, because kita tak offer active and ongoing treatment, so kita link, kita akan refer them to appropriate parties, and then that is actively by us. Tapi in order to reduce risk for burnout, itulah dalam poster kita tu kita share some kita share some simple but that and yet meaningful information on how to take care yourself physically and mentally, because if you take care your physical and mental well-being, usually this will increase your resiliency. Once your resiliency increase, as I show tadi kan dalam my slide, resiliency is one of the protective factor towards burnout. So we also open, if let's say kalau misalnya kita pernah, we got invitation by certain department that want us to do CME to talk about burnout, so we send our representative. So kita bagi CME in that department yang request tu. So ada few ways lah, but the thing is kita punya strategi more towards macam increase awareness. What we do is we share information about burnout, so that people aware kan, what is burnout, what are the features. So bila diorang tahu apa itu burnout, baru diorang boleh detect kan.
Betul.
Dan baru kita boleh, dan baru diorang tahu yang oh ni burnout. Actually it's a condition that can be treated, but probably we need someone else help jugalah. Kalau tak boleh nak handle sendiri.
Faham. Okay, and also can Dr. Hafiz share a bit about your experience, your first-hand experience of treating a burnout healthcare worker? Anything in particular in the recent time, of course, the pandemic kan mesti ada ramai juga kan?
Kalau ikut burnout ni, kalau yang from the guideline that I read, actually the important one of the most important action to be taken is actually to take a break. Kan sebab burnout kan tadi kalau macam ikut ICD-11 punya konsep, dia come out because of prolonged chronic stress dekat workplace kan, fatigue kan. So lama sangat bekerja tu usually lead to burnout. So dia punya lawan to reduce the burnout is actually to take a break. So kalau if let's say the situation is sesuai, usually we will give MC lah. Macam as a doctor kan, kalau kita rasa patient tu burnout yang sangat teruk to the level where we believe that he or she punya working performance and decision making dah impact, rather than force them to still go to work and work in a miserable condition, might as well kita bagi MC at least 2-3 hari bagi dia able to get a rest, tidur dan sebagainya lah. But of course from my observation, it's not easy juga during pandemic COVID kan, macam kat HKL, because if you remember third wave is very bad, there's so many ward yang kita kena buka, and staff pun yalah, bukannya admin HKL nak paksa staff semua kerja kan, tapi because ward dah banyak and then staff pun kita pun limited. So kalau semua dapat MC nanti maybe the issue is takut pula siapa who going to run the ward kan, nanti yang tertinggal pun akan eventually pun dapat burn out juga because have to do extra work. So it's very it's very difficult situation. That's why sometimes I guess lah, if any healthcare center yang really dah dia punya resources dah pun burn out, dah tak cukup, so usually kena ask help from outside juga kan. That's why as you know, we all read kan, macam negeri-negeri yang dah teruk sangat tu, kadang-kadang negeri yang agak tenang sikit from COVID ni, diorang akan hantar healthcare staff kan pergi dekat that state untuk tolong. This is all among the action that can be taken to reduce the severity of burnout by reducing one of the factor, which is high workload and long working hours.
Okay, all right. And okay, I have a question from YouTube. One of the question here is actually quite true. Okay, I'll read out the question. Thank you for organizing this event. Question to Dr. Hafiz. Are there among the healthcare workers, are there any difficulty for the healthcare workers to actually reach out for help due to stigmatization?
Of course. As you unfortunately, if you baca some study kan, kan usually kita selalu famous before COVID, stigma towards mental illness, stigma towards HIV/AIDS. Turn out stigma towards COVID-19 pun is real, and it happen even among healthcare worker. Kan kalau stigma ni hold by public, okay lah, we can understand. Maybe they feel they hold this stigma because lack of awareness, lack of understanding kan, probably because they are not from medical background and they don't work in healthcare center. Tapi unfortunately, the stigma among COVID-19 ni pun among healthcare worker is true. And then it's true because during one of our few of our session with nurses kan, during the group counselling, so memang some of them memang cakap yang they experience stigma because some of them has been diagnosed with positive COVID in the past. Tak teruk pun, maybe cat 1 je, or maybe cat 2 yang mild kan. Tapi because the moment colleague dia yang lain dengar dia COVID lah, everyone stay away, tak nak cakap dengan dia, macam as if dia very contagious person. So dia terasa lah. So sometimes that's why people who bila dia tahu dia dapat COVID kan, kadang dia takut, kalau let's say when he or she got the news that the COVID test is positive, they try to keep it to themselves lah, because they're scared kalau nanti orang tahu, and people start pandang dia semacam kan, nanti jadi dia pun lagilah kalau dia sanggup sorok the information so that the kawan tak stigmatize dia, apatah lagi untuk dia seek help. Lagilah dia malu kan, because nanti alamak, daripada tak ada siapa tahu dah pergi psychiatric, lagilah file silap hari bulan, file buka kan. But this is wrong lah. Tu yang this one ni kita kena combat, this stigma. Because I believe stigma actually stem out from lack of understanding, lack of awareness. That's why education on COVID-19 kan, tentang dia punya the nature of the disease, the mode of the transmission, the form of treatment yang ada, very important. So one of it not only to save life but to reduce stigma juga.
Correct. True, Dr. Hafiz. Actually among healthcare workers memang a lot feel macam kalau dah kena COVID-19 and burnout and all that, they're very afraid they'll get isolated basically.
Of course.
So it's important for us time to time to actually remind everybody and to create awareness, not just the public but among the healthcare workers as well lah. Okay, Dr. Hafiz, can I ask some more question ke? Ada lagi soalan?
Boleh, no problem.
We have a question from Iliana Surya Omar. She says, change workplace, is it a good solution to burnout person?
Depend. Kalau let's say burnout ni actually come out from an acute condition kan, maksudnya before that new condition happen, kita no issue working in that place. Then kalau if we know this condition will not last forever, so I think change tempat kerja tu mungkin agak dramatic lah. But what we can do if let's say we start experiencing burnout because of that situation, we gather all the resource, all the help that we can get lah kan, all the social support, the teamwork, or maybe kalau kita rasa kita nak see psychiatrist, with voluntarily ke, just to preemptively combat burnout pun, I think that's more like macam more practical kot, rather than tukar tempat kerja. But then lain lah, kalau misalnya burnout tu happen dah lama, maybe because of combination with adjustment disorder yang never settle kan, then that person know that this is not my place, because probably I do not fit because I don't have the capability to do it and so forth. If let's say that condition dah macam prolong or macam dah masuk kronik tu, maybe switching workplace would be a better solution lah kot, kan, especially kalau kita dah exhausted all the initial approach to deal with the burnout tu, fail.
Okay, faham. Okay, Dr. Hafiz, is it okay if we can proceed with maybe one or two more questions?
Can, no problem.
Alright, okay. So we have one question here from Madiha Ahmad Wat. She says, Salam and hello. How can we prevent burnout when there is, despite understanding burnout, there is lack of empathy from workplace superiors themselves? And how to manage compassion fatigue to avoid getting burnout? That's a very good question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you Madiha for the question. Itulah, burnout ni as you can see kan, in many study, dia bukan satu faktor je yang cause burnout. Dia kan few factors kan. So maybe as a person yang experiencing burnout, with our own effort, we manage to control certain factor. Tapi kalau certain factor ni yang we cannot control, still ongoing kan. For example, boss yang tak berapa nak empathy, sympathy dengan kita semua, this will be a risk factor that will prolong the burnout. That's why I said macam it depends. Burnout ni can be, I guess in terms of severity, complexity pun dia ada spectrum lah kot. You boleh dapat yang a straightforward burnout, atau you boleh dapat burnout, patient yang burnout, staff yang burnout, yang dia punya situation lebih kompleks. So of course, I believe kalau macam as a person lah, as a human ni kan, not all the things we can control lah on this earth kan, dalam our life. So if let's say we are facing certain problem, and that kind of problem maybe cause us to have burnout, we can try our best to improve our condition by controlling all the factors that we can control. Tapi kalau banyak factors yang kita tak boleh control tu, in the end lebih powerful and it impact the our progress kan, to get better. Then maybe we have to take a drastic measure lah. For example macam tukar tempat kerja kan, or maybe apply untuk transfer to different unit. Because I got patient jugalah yang suffer from this macam toxic workplace kan. So regardless, I mean, if I to believe my patient my client punya information yang dia share, despite dia punya effort untuk to show that he's a good worker, dia buat kerja banyak, tapi it seems that the perspective from the superior masih negatif, still macam ada nak cari salah, dia pun rasa macam hopeless kan. So kalau dah, despite all his good effort to change the situation, nampaknya fail because of the factors that they cannot control, maybe some drastic decision need to be made lah kot.
Understood. Like
And then so dia kata okay, setelah burnout, yes of course, not to say macam pertaining to Dr. Madiha punya question, not because kita dah belajar about burnout kita tak boleh burnout. Still kita boleh burnout, especially kita have all the factors yang lead to burnout tu. Cuma with knowledge, at least kita more aware. Kita aware, kita tahu kita dah burnout dah ni. Maybe kita boleh measure juga severity of our burnout kan, since ada questionnaire that can score burnout punya severity. So and then how to manage compassion fatigue kan. I got this question juga, I think last week CME. To me lah, compassion fatigue ni macam ni, being compassionate is good. Okay, tak ramai, banyak I believe banyak manusia atas dunia ni memang love to help each other. Tapi but we cannot forget, although we like to help each other, we have to take care ourselves juga. Because if we want to take care each other at the expense of neglecting ourselves, that I guess in the end pun tak bagus jugalah. So how to manage compassion fatigue is to be aware. So macamnya kita acknowledge, we can acknowledge that we are a person that like to help others, tapi we also have to aware that we are a human with limitation. Despite kita punya drive untuk tolong semua orang, kita probably we cannot help everything kan. That is important for us to realize. So to realize our own limit, so to know that our own boundaries. And then kita bolehlah offer help based on kita punya capability je lah. So kalau kita boleh tolong, kita tolong. Kalau kita dah tak boleh tolong, dan kita aware lah. Bukanlah nak kata kita ni teruk kan, orang yang tak bagus, but ini je limit kita.
Kan? Sometimes it's difficult to say no.
That's why.
So
that's why
that part comes in kan. Macam
so kalau macam let's say people want to borrow money from me, kalau my good friend, kalau I a billionaire kan with limitless money, bagi je lah kan. Tapi kalau misalnya my friend susah, I pun tak adalah senang sangat. Takkan I nak jual my takkan nak tolong sampai I pula tak cukup makan kan, nanti I pula yang stress. So just aware, just acknowledge our good traits, but at the same time aware our own limitation. That is not wrong. Kita human kan, we have our strength and we also have our weaknesses.
So it's always important to set the boundaries.
Of course.
That is very important, to not add on to the burnout. Betul. And also another thing is there's another question here. Kebanyakan pekerja yang burnout adalah pekerja yang cemerlang. Usually the ones who are always there to do this and that everywhere. Why is it like that?
I guess kalau kita tengok, if we look back into the stages of burnout by Freud, Berger tadi, Handenberger tadi kan dia kata burnout we always start with excessive drive kan.
Correct.
Excessive
Then
ambition.
push harder.
So yes, and then kalau we can couple dengan yang study tadi by Ademir kan, yang personal factor kan, salah satu faktor, another factors identify is perfectionist. And memang usually people yang ambition ni, yang very ambitious ni, maybe at the same time perfectionist kan. So diorang set the goal very high and they want to achieve it. Sometimes when they start the goal, diorang tak realize yang the obstacle that will come with it. the all the hindrance kan. Maybe actually tak senang nak achieve, tapi sebab dia letak too high and dia rasa dia boleh achieve. So when they fail to achieve it, then usually dia akan force lagi lah. They will force themselves to try and achieve. Tapi bila dia kejar tak dapat, tapi dia tak stop, tu yang dia akan start feeling exhausted. Tu yang macam again dalam 12 stages of grief tu, dia akan start succumb to full burnout syndrome lah. Mentally exhausted, physically exhausted.
Okay, understood, Dr. Hafiz. I think that's all for the questions for today. Okay, thank you so much for the excellent presentation, Dr. Hafiz, and also for answering all the questions given by our participants. And thank you to all the participants for participating and asking questions actively. Thank you so much. All right, with that, let us go for a short break for 30 minutes from 10 a.m. until 10:30 a.m. So we will continue the session at 10:30 a.m. Is that okay for everyone? All right, so we will resume back at 10:30 lah, 10:30. And thank you so much, Dr. Hafiz.
Okay, welcome. Okay, thank you to the committee for inviting me, and minta maaf salah silap lah if any of my presentation or my answer inadequate. Okay, again, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Actually, we have another 2 more minutes to actually begin our session. Before we begin, I would also like to run through a few housekeeping reminders that I have mentioned earlier, just in case some of us have missed out. Okay, so before we begin officially, the reminders, like I mentioned earlier, to all the participants, please keep your mics muted and your video switched off throughout the presentation. If you have any questions for the presenters, please type them into the chat box, even for the YouTube viewers. We will attend to your questions at the end of each presentation, provided we have sufficient time. Only Zoom registered participants will receive the e-certificate and MyCPD points, whereby a QR code will be displayed at the end of the webinar, and the e-cert will be emailed to you within the next 2 weeks. And please do not forget to answer the feedback survey at the end of the webinar later. All right. Okay. With that, let us not waste time. It's already 10:30. So welcome back to everyone, and hope you all had a good time to refresh yourselves earlier. So we shall now proceed with our second presenter of the day, Datuk Dr. Alzamani Muhammad Idros. He is a consultant emergency physician at Hospital Kuala Lumpur and also the head of Pediatrics Emergency Department Hospital Tunku Azizah Kuala Lumpur. His areas of interest are in disaster medicine, medical legal management, and high altitude emergency medicine. He has served for many medical events, namely a key person who founded Malaysian Resuscitation Association and participated in humanitarian services during earthquake and tsunami, locally and internationally. Furthermore, he has won more than 20 awards for his paper presentations, locally and internationally. In 2016, he was also awarded with the Pingat Setia Diraja Award, carrying the title Dato at the federal level. So apart from gracing us with his speech today, he would be gracing us with something, he has some surprise for us later on today. So I can't wait to have a look at the surprise later. With that, let us welcome Datuk Dr. Alzamani Muhammad Idros to present on handling burnout from the perspective of a frontliner. Datuk.
Hello, Assalamualaikum, and good morning. Thank you to Madam Chairperson for the kind introduction. Very grateful to be invited to participate in this webinar. Before that, may I check with the organizer? Could you listen to me clearly? Is it loud and clear?
Yes, Dato. So far, it's loud and clear.
Okay, maybe I will do an even better sound check with this guitar, all right? So, and you tell me whether you could listen it to sound and clear before I start my presentation.
Sure, Dato.
Perjalanan ini terasa sangat menyedihkan. Sayang engkau tak duduk di sampingku, kawan. Banyak cerita yang mestinya kau saksikan di tanah kering berbatuan. Oh, 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 oh. Kawan dengar apa jawabnya. Jika ku tanya mengapa bapa ibunya telah lama mati, ditelan bencana tanah ini. Sesampainya di laut, ku kabarkan semuanya kepada karang, kepada ombak, kepada matahari. Tetapi semua diam, tetapi semua bisu. Tinggal aku sendiri ternatap langit. Barangkali di sana ada jawabnya. Mengapa di tanahku terjadi bencana? Mungkin Tuhan mulai bosan melihat tingkah kita yang selalu salah dan bangga dengan dosa-dosa, atau alam mulai enggan bersahabat dengan kita. Coba kita bertanya pada rumput yang bergoyang. Oh, 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 oh. Okay, that was a song, Berita Kepada Kawan, which was written by an Indonesian songwriter when the country was hit by disaster. Sama jugalah ya, semasa pandemik datang, kita sebenarnya menghadapi bencana, and it was one of the worst disaster ever to have hit us. So I will share my screen now. So saya kira my sound check was okay just now, Dr. Divya.
Yes, Dr. Datuk, everything is clear.
Yeah, so there's a reason why I shared the music in the beginning, and I think it will make sense throughout the presentation nanti, ya. And it is related to handling burnout. Okay, I'm just starting my presentation. Okay, can you see my slide now?
Yes, Datuk, can see.
Okay, all right, so let's carry on. Yeah? So I would start off with this video. Was also presented my head of department, Datuk Dr. Mahada, during his presentation during our recent AMAS conference. And it was a tribute, a collection of what we went through during the pandemic. Let's just watch this video. So that was the pandemic for us. Yeah? The pandemic was first detected in Wuhan in December 2019. And we are already now approaching December 2021. 2 years, almost 2 years since the beginning of the pandemic. And the worldwide, until October, there has already been 206 million cases, and death worldwide already touched 5 million. That's like a combination of people, both Kedah and Island, or the whole of Lembah Klang Valley, people disappeared from the planet. In Malaysia alone, there was 2.45 million, and with a death of about almost 29,000. If you look to the past, there were two pandemics, 100 years apart. 100 years ago, there was a Spanish flu, which was also a huge biological disaster, a pandemic that killed so many people. And it is somewhat like what's happening or what just happened these past 2 years with COVID-19. And if you compare side by side, Spanish flu happened between 1918 until 1920, about 2 years. And COVID-19 started in 2019, and it is coming to its second year now in 2021. And the virus for Spanish flu was influenza A, H1N1, but for COVID-19, it's coronavirus. And during the Spanish flu, at that there's no vaccine available. But now we have had vaccines of various brands. During the Spanish flu, there were 500 million cases. Despite at that time there was no flights, there was the travel was easy as today, but 500 million cases. But here for COVID-19, with all the restriction, SOP, masks in place, we've got half of that in 2 years' time, 246 million cases. The Spanish flu killed 50, and it was believed up to even 100 million people in that 2 years. The COVID-19 has killed 5 million. And it is because we had better measures put in place with all the SOPs as well as the vaccine. The Spanish flu never died. There were mutations from the first influenza A, H1N1, until now. The mutations had brought us multiple other pandemics after that in the form of H2N2, H3N2, H1N1. So it is expected in the same manner for COVID-19. Not only we have to handle the grandchildren of Spanish flu, but we shall be handling the grandchildren of COVID-19. Already we had seen mutations in the form of variants, alpha, beta, gamma, and delta, and more to come. So our challenges are not over. Since the start of the pandemic, I believe in one thing, in that we need from the very beginning to try to prevent this. Kita cuba sedaya upaya untuk mengelak daripada berlakunya transmisi. Sebenarnya perang melawan COVID ini bukannya sukar kaedahnya. Kalau kita boleh memakai mask, kalau kita boleh menjauhi orang, kalau kita boleh membasuh tangan bagi objek sentuhan orang, ia adalah senjatanya untuk kita menghalang daripada merebaknya virus ini. It is not difficult to stop. It's just like fire. If you put wood near fire, the fire will continuously burn. Yeah? But if you take the wood away, the fire will just die off. The same with the virus. Kalau diletakkan orang adalah umpama kayu bakar untuk api. Jadi kalau dijauhkan orang, kita dapat menghentikan transmisi tersebut. The only thing, it was very difficult to convince people to be disciplined, to stay away from people. And hence, you see at the eating places, people eat together close by, even at the pantries. And hence, it was difficult to stop it. And the only way to stop it, because of our indiscipline or inability to control in 100% manner, was to have vaccine. So saya cuba memberikan peringatan demi peringatan using the social media through the Facebook, so that people be aware. And I believe many listen, and to some extent we did achieve some goals in trying to stop or limit the spread. From time to time, I did try to remind people of the situation so that they are aware of that, if that they have great role to play. If they play their role, then we could function better at the hospital. So bit by bit, I tried to let them know, have some insight of what's happening in the hospital, so that they will be serious in handling this situation. Semasa virus ini berlaku, we're not just handling the pandemic, not just COVID-19, but along the way there were multiple things that happened that again challenge us in terms of our resilience. This was one of the example. One day when I was about to go home after passing over the shift to my colleague, all of a sudden I heard there was a loud thud noise on the ceiling. Ada bunyi yang kuat di atas bumbung. Dan setelah diperiksa, rupanya somebody fell on top the ceiling at our department. So we rushed, went up, and then saw the patient lying on the on our ceiling, and then we quickly informed the fire and rescue services, pihak bomba, untuk datang membantu dan cuba menurunkan kembali. Everyone had to wear the PPE. That patient was a COVID patient. He was COVID positive, and he tried to run away. So now we went to and attended to the patient, and then managed to bring it down subsequently. And miraculously, that patient did not have any fracture. Dia tak ada sebarang kecederaan yang serius, tidak ada kepatahan dan sebagainya. Dibawa kembali ke Jabatan Kecemasan, diperiksa, and then he was fine, and then admitted back to the same ward. And the next day he tried to run away again. So you see, it's also handling the situation apart from the disease itself. And this happened. And even during that time, we had in our department a patient that was ventilated after he attempted to commit suicide. He was also COVID-19 positive, but he jumped off from his condominium and then suffered multiple fractures, and he was intubated in our department. So there was a huge stress for the patients themselves, but there was also a stress of being quarantined, of being imprisoned in the hospital, at home. There was also, and this stress also hit us because we had to handle them, not just the patients, but also the situations. And if you remember, this was on 24th May this year. It was a challenging time of the pandemic. At that time, new cases coming, appearing about 6,000 new cases every day at that time. Yeah? And then at night, suddenly we received information that there was 2 LRT crash head on. Yeah? And we had to handle this mass casualty incident apart from handling the pandemic itself. So we had no choice, and the pandemic, the COVID patients was coming in. It was being handled at the dirty area, and then when this happened, we had to activate our disaster plan and also handle this disaster during what is already a disaster in the form of pandemic. So we have a disaster within a disaster. And this patient, again, we had to handle according to the new norm, whereby all of them had to be screened, at least temperature, the epidemiological link, and all those admitted had to be screened with a lab test to make sure they do not bring COVID with them. Alhamdulillah, we managed to handle. There were 64 patients that night, and our team stopped from going home. The evening shift stayed back to help, and then the pengurusan came to help, and all the key specialties teams came down. We were able to handle this mass casualty incident in a matter of 5 hours until we stood down at about 1:38 in the morning. This shows that as a frontliner, one thing is for sure is that you cannot be sure of the patients that would come to you, the types of illness they bring, and scale, whether it is a little or a lot or somewhere in between that come to you. You just have to live with uncertainty. And for some, this can be a huge stress to live in a world of uncertainty, in a world of whereby you cannot determine the time patient come and see you and the type of illness they bring with them. So you could imagine living with this. So this was that night, handling the mass casualty incident. This was at the KLCC where the incident happened. And then all of a sudden, 12 ambulances appear at the same time in front of the triage counter. And nobody can say no to all this. Right? Those who could see the temperature, and you just cannot bypass this new way of handling patients at the department. The job has doubled. We have 2 separate areas, one area clean area, the other area dirty area, and all must be screened because we do not know just who might bring the COVID into the hospital. So the good thing about all this during this difficult time is that we found that to have a great team, to have a team that could cry with you, that could laugh with you, that we were looking for what else we could do to help one another, really helped. We couldn't do this alone, and then probably the key to standing against the storm is probably to have good people around you, that you nurture the camaraderie, the unitedness, and the team spirit way long before the incident occurs. So I believe that the pandemic just brought that out from all of us, because for so long we had been living in this spirit of teamwork. So along the way, I'm sure this is common to you, the frontliners out there. You have been swabbed. Sebab berulang kali kita menghadapi situasi yang tiba-tiba tiba-tiba orang yang kita rawat dia sebenarnya COVID positif. Tiba-tiba kawan yang kat sebelah pantry itu dia sebenarnya COVID positif. Semuanya tiba-tiba dan you had to be screened. Berapa kali screen pun sampai tak terkira kadang-kadang And we saw the rise of the case. The pandemic just surged and surged and surged. And we had to open areas after areas after areas in the department. Every inch that we could take, we took. And the department had become a military hospital. Yeah, basically, at one point, at the height of the pandemic in July specifically, we had about 200 patients already managed, already settled. The management, the patient had started management and all diagnosis established, but there's no bed for them to go to. So they were stranded at the emergency department. So if you look at 200, if you think about it, one ward may take up about 20 patients, right? So it's about having easily 10 wards in the department, in the emergency department. And at the same time, we had 30 other patients ventilated in the emergency department. And if one ICU is about 15 patients, it's like having 2 ICUs in the emergency department. So essentially, the department had become a hospital within a department, a hospital within hospital. So we had to handle this with whatever stuff we have, whatever could be sent to us, whatever we could, whoever could help us. So we had no choice. So you know, sometimes when we try to educate the public, I try to see myself practicing what I call preventive emergency medicine, in the sense of trying to create awareness so people would be serious about the SOP. So sometimes they pick up what we write, but one thing for certain, I know my responsibility in choosing what's the right thing to put on the social media, so that nobody gets into trouble or the hospital gets into trouble. But on the contrary, the hospital will be respected and trusted, because that's the most important untuk mempunyai kepercayaan rakyat kepada perkhidmatan hospital dan KKM. Dan itu yang cuba saya dan rakan-rakan cuba lakukan. But I kid you not, there were times when I felt like it was like a Titanic. Yang kapal model Titanic ini saya beli dan ada di rumah saya. Dan saya sangat suka cerita Titanic. Saya melihat dokumentarinya berulang kali. But one thing about the Titanic is this, that no matter how strong the ship was, but if you have a hole in the ship, it will sink. Semasa berlakunya pandemik, kita merawat semua produk bencana ini, biologi ini di hospital. Dan yang masalahnya, kita boleh merawat, tetapi kalau sentiasa ada lubang, kapal itu tidak boleh bertahan. Maksud saya lubang is the SOP of the people. If people were rigid and really steadfast with the SOP, we could stop the ship from sinking. And at that point of time, apabila ada 200 pesakit yang tersadai di kecemasan, 2 ICU di kecemasan, I was thinking that we need a lifeboat, and we really needed that. And during the Titanic, people die. More than 1,000, about 1,500 people died because there were not enough lifeboats. So during the pandemic, the lifeboats may be the help we got by decanting to other hospitals or something to cushion our functionality, so that we did not sink. Anyway, during the pandemic, I just like to bring you to look at this very pretty lady. She was an emergency physician, emergency specialist, just like me. Her name was Dr. Lorna Breen. He was the head of emergency department at New York Presbyterian Allen Hospital. Same age with me. She's 49. I'm younger than her. I'm 48. She committed suicide. At the height of the pandemic, she committed suicide. And it broke our heart that someone like her, and when you read about her biography, she's quite a strong-willed lady, someone who really cared for the patient. And it must have been hard for her that she had to commit suicide after feeling this huge sense of helplessness. If we look at it, it's not just her. There were other doctors who committed suicide as well in America, in India, so the question is, did stress disorder? You might ask this question. Yeah. So when I look at it at that time, it's not just me, but also my friends. We had this difficulty to sleep. You know, we got some symptoms, being kept awake at night, it's like very hard. And some people even had nightmare. So I tried to look at myself. I sometimes laid awake at night and couldn't sleep. So when I look at the definition, whether I actually had post-traumatic stress disorder or not, this is what I saw as a criteria by the American Psychiatric Association. You need to have these symptoms. You need to have one symptom of re-experiencing, meaning that it may be in the form of you hallucinating, or you having nightmare, you're re-experiencing it. You're experiencing it. You may have avoidance symptom that you try to avoid from talking about it or going to the place. One avoidance symptoms, or you may have hypersensitivity, meaning that you heard sound and whatnot, you try to run quickly, your heart become rush, become palpitation, you're having palpitation. Being withdrawn, not talking about things like that. So these symptoms need to be more than 1 month, then you can call it post-traumatic stress disorder. But if it is less 1 month, it is called acute stress disorder. I actually had acute stress disorder. So I would say that in handling this, because the symptom that I had, just could not sleep, being awake at night, that's quite limited to not prolonged, not more than 1 month. So I had acute stress reaction. So, but then again, this is just probably some tips. It didn't last long. That symptom maybe just for a few nights, but overall I could still handle it. But what I could say, this is some of the tips that I think helped me along the way, so that it didn't bring me to a very serious situation. So in terms of avoiding the burnout, I always believe that now is always to start with being grateful. We should be bersyukur, and I believe that when you are grateful, the doors for solution will open. If you're grateful, I mean, it's like you have come to terms of it. You're not battling it, debating it. You know that it happens, and you're grateful. At least you are still breathing. You still you are here. and which means that you could do something about it. So I believe that number one is to start with syukur. And then number two, I think this is one of the most important slides in this presentation. This was taken from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book, written by Stephen Covey. And I believe that this could really help to solve stresses in most of the times. Yeah? If you look at this graph, there is what we call the area of influence. Area influence meaning that within this area of influence, if you put your energy in this green area of influence, you can make a difference. But outside of that green area is outside of your area of influence. And no matter how much energy you put in there, you would not make a difference. So area of influence is an area where you have a control. For example, if your cat dies, you cry for 1 million years, that will be putting your energy in the red area, outside of area of influence. Your cat's still dead and you will be miserable and nothing changed. But if you say that my cat died, okay, let's go get a better cat, that would be putting your energy here in the area of influence. And you may even get even a better cat, and you feel better. The cat has someone to care for, and that is that's what it means, yeah, to put your energy there. And the same in the pandemic. Yeah? Someone you love may even die, but you have to put your energy into those who are alive. Some people you just can't save, but you should put your energy into the people whom you can save with whatever is available for you. So this is tip number 2. Put all your energy into the area of influence, and it will make a difference. Tip number 3, have some sense of humor. I like to share jokes with my team, because every laughter is very important. It's actually very complex, yeah? Because with each laugh, it is a hormonal thing. You will have endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, all released, and it will distress you. And I believe that you need to have some sense of humor. For example, one night, my MO was telling me, we don't have enough ventilator. It was stressing her out. So I told her, well, we have one extra ventilator now. And she was puzzled. I said, well, you were ventilating your problem, just became a ventilator. So we just laughed about it. So we need this as to distress, but of course we will put our energy to find that ventilator. So this is another tip. Okay, so we came to this, music or hobbies that can help. So just now I played the guitar, and then it helps to have hobbies. And you need something to put your mind off from the crisis. You may have your own hobbies that you could pursue. Another hobby that I had was this, washing cars during the weekend. I would usually wash my car, but if there are neighbors' cars at the condominium, at the place where I stay, if there's some leftover soap, I would just wash their cars. And I think I've been doing that over and over again. And it was such a joy. So actually at the parking area, there was a mark that stated that park at your own risk. So if you park your car here, which is actually close to the water hose, you will risk having your car washed. So they don't know who washed the car, but for me, it is not just about the hobby of washing cars, not of the leftover soap. Because when you do something good to others without expecting anything in return, there's something magical that happens. You just feel some sort of calmness. And suddenly you will find that things make more sense. And in that way, it is a therapy that could help you in a very difficult time. And this was one of the things that helped me to keep my sanity. Take a walk. This is another, well, I don't know whether I call it a hobby or not, but every day I will try to walk 10,000 steps. And and try to soak into the environment. The Japanese had this concept of bathing in the forest, but you can just walk without, you don't have to plan so much, just walk. And this is one example of the recent walk that I took. Sometimes I walk at night because I don't have time after work, and so walking can distress yourself, and you don't have to wait for people. Another tip is to get help if you are in need. You would know what you can handle and what you can't. So there are people who help along the way. In our hospital also, there are hotlines from the mental health specialists. Just get help, just talk with people. And tip number 6 is that the strongest of trees have the deepest of roots. So if we are sensible and rational and face every storm, after the storm, you will find that more roots grow under the tree. In fact, this was what discovered when they look at trees growing in the areas where windy areas, the roots are usually deeper and stronger compared to areas whereby there are no winds at all. So just like the pandemic or any crisis or any difficulties when you in your professional life, if you are patient and make steps, rational steps, you will come out stronger. And when you look at your job, stop looking at your job as about the salary at every end of the month. Look at your job as a calling. Ada sebabnya why you are the chosen ones. Why Anda adalah insan kiriman Tuhan untuk membantu mereka. It should be that way. Whatever you do is a calling. And when you look at that, then you will find that why you have to be there for others. Remember that all this will pass. One day, all this will pass. Just like at the height of the pandemic, we kept telling ourselves that one day, all this will pass and you will live to tell. Another tip is that choose not to be a prisoner of anger and hatred. Some people are imprisoned by the anger, by the hatred for life until they die. And it's for nothing. You could set yourself free. Sometimes you're angry at the system. Sometimes you're angry at the leader. Sometimes you're angry even with your colleagues. But don't be a prisoner to the anger. Go into the areas under your influence and find a solution there and be at peace. Because sometimes the problem is not you. Yeah? And always be sensible and rational because all solutions are there. No matter how irrational you can be. I mean, shouting is not rational. Creating more conflict is not rational. But when you want to find a solution, even between departments, inside in the departments, it's about the sensibility of the decision, the rationality of that decision, and the same with everything that we do in handling the difficult situation. Tip number 11 is to stay united. No matter what, we are people of the same. Keep the ship afloat, and nobody should make a hole, and everyone should be rowing the ship in the same direction, and we could get to our destination faster and safe. And another tip is to understand this concept that no one is living this world alive, no matter who you are. So we each live in a borrowed body on a borrowed time. When the time comes, we return back what we borrowed to our maker. We never own anything. We got everything on loan. So remember, in a pandemic, there's no emergency. You can't save everyone's life. Even the prophet could not save everyone. And that's a prophet. He can't even save his own family. And you're not a prophet. So you do what you can, the best that you can, and focusing on the people that you could save. And remember, this is just like a chapter of your life. A story that begins with one day, everything was perfect. And then everything was perfect. In the end, everything was perfect. And they live happily ever after. It's not an interesting story, but a story that begins like one day, everything is okay, but suddenly there was a storm, the rain came, the water flowed, and there was huge flooding, and people were running away from their life until suddenly the wind stops, and then people came to help, and people were saved, and they could find a higher, better ground and build better homes there and restart the family, and they then live with a better times. So God is making your story interesting with this pandemic. So that's something to think about. And remember that after a rain, there can be a rainbow. And you will not have everything, but you will have enough. So the organizer asked me to read this poem. I'm already at the end of my presentation. This was a poem that I wrote many years ago in Italy at this lake, Lake Maggiore, Lago Maggiore, and I saw these boats that Great Lake, and it has something to do with disaster. It was a course on disaster at that time. So I will just read this quickly before I end this presentation. Yeah? On this one lake of calm water, boats came from four corners of the world. They came to this cold, pristine, peaceful water. They came to this old, fine, beautiful water. They came to this bold, water and enjoy the days, be it sunshine or cold, rainy days. Here, this calm water may turn angry. This calm water may turn ory. This calm water may turn rowdy and rock all those boats on that lake of one. Nevertheless, one must always remember that angry water always makes fine skippers. Angry water fine sailors. Angry water always makes fine commanders. Here, in weeks of war and peace, the Great Lake had taught us the beauty of disaster, the colors of a fighter, and the magic of a survivor. Those boats on that lake of one will soon travel home and tame the angry water of their own oceans, having learned from the wise waters of this lake of one. So the point of this poem is that with all anger, with the angry water, with the angry pandemic, we should be better commanders to steer ahead and handle the next storm better. So, pada hadirin yang mendengar this talk, ya, pada saya, Tuhan tidak memberikan segala-galanya untuk kita, tetapi Tuhan memberikan semuanya cukup untuk kita semua. God never gives us everything, but God gives us enough for us to have everything. So with that, thank you very much. And perhaps we could go to any questions from the organizer. I will just stop the sharing here.
Okay, thank you so much, Dato. I think it was rather a huge surprise for all of us with the starting the presentation with a song and ending it with a poem that was written by you. It was really nice. There was a lot of talent in you, Dato. All right. Okay. I would like to actually thank you for actually sharing with us on your vulnerability and also being very open about what you have been through during these difficult times, during this pandemic time, and as well as your strengths. This will be very inspirational to a lot of us, especially to healthcare workers, from paramedics to doctors to nurses to everyone in the healthcare system. Okay, Dato, we have questions for you. Okay, Dato. As a notable leader in your workplace and in the field of emergency medicine in general, could you share some tips on how leaders can contribute to preventing and recovering from burnout in workplace?
I think preventing burnout is not a one-day work. It's continuous process. I believe that we all need some positivity in handling this. Our team feel that they are together, that we are together in the same boat. And for me, I believe in telling stories. So usually after our work rounds, I try to tell some motivational stories that could unite us together. So it ranges in all kinds of stories, but the stories are actually powerful. I believe that people in the past, that people that came from a family who tell stories, they would be much stronger, because usually people remember stories. People forget everything else. But when they listen to a story, they would be more motivated. For example, the story of asking them whether they would pick up a crumpled piece of a paper on the floor that nobody wanted, but whether they would do the same if that crumpled piece of paper is a note, a 100 ringgit note. So they would still pick up despite being crumpled, because it's the value inside. So then the moral of the story is that everyone, if you have the value inside, you will be picked up and you will be significant to the organization. So things like that, for example. So my answer to that question is that one method that I believe is powerful and underused is the use of stories and keeping the staff motivated.
Understood. Okay, thank you so much, Dato. Okay, we have another question for you. Dato, can you tell us a bit more about the book you wrote and how participants can go about getting it?
Okay, thank you very much for the interest. Actually, the book was the collection of my best experiences handling crisis through stories. And there were some names that you would recognize. For example, Dr. Salina's names in the book as well. But I believe that those were important stories. Those are stories, like I said, I like stories. But if you look out there, there are reports which do not capture the emotions. I believe emotions are important, especially also for mental health. Hence, I see myself as a photographer of emotions, and I photograph those emotions, record those emotions, and put them in words in that book. And you could learn how to solve the crisis from many aspects, from the crisis of negotiating with someone who's got a knife on the belly of a 12-year-old kid, to the stories of in the Everest, or even transforming a plane into ICU, things like that. But the fear were real, the uncertainties were real, and on Shopee. But the only thing on Shopee, it's some people ask because they want the autograph. On Shopee, it won't be autograph. But if you buy on Shopee, I would be happy to autograph it. But if you want readily autograph, you could contact Puan K. I think the number is 012206. I will put it on the chat box if you just go.
Okay.
Yeah, so she will assist you with that, or go to the Shopee.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I believe a lot of there are some participants who have actually already bought the book and they have actually read it.
Thank you.
So okay, all right. Okay, Dato, can you also share with us probably like one of your most unforgettable incident during this pandemic, besides the one you mentioned about the one where the patient jumped out of the building? Anything else that was rather a huge task?
MCI, many things that touched our hearts. For example, watching someone with a family member before they they were intubated. So everyone, before we intubated them, because we didn't know whether they would wake up or not, or gone home, because the mortality rate is very high at that time. Out of 100, only 20 managed to get away alive after being intubated. So that touched our hearts. So not just that, we also observe the spirit of Malaysians during the pandemic. To be honest, it was the people of Malaysia that motivated us to hold on, to stand firm and tall, because they came to us, supporting us, trying to ask what we needed, when we were short. Some volunteered also who came, some sent food, some sent equipments, and we were able to handle just nice. Like I said, God didn't give everything. God gave the pandemic, but God gave enough for us to handle the pandemic and to get out from the pandemic as best as we could with what we have. And it's like people who prepared the parachute for the jumpers. We were the parachute jumpers, but those people, they packed the parachute so that it is well staged, and there were no holes that when we jump, we could land safely. They were our parachute packers, the people of Malaysia. So that was forever be memorable in my mind. And I did write from time to time appreciating them on my social media, Facebook platform.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you, Dato'. I think with that, we can conclude the presentation. No more questions. Thank you again so much.
Can I share the video as a summary of my presentation, because we've got 4 minutes, right? So I'll just share the screen back, but this is just a summary to summarize the tips that I left you with just now, but it's and I think that would be just nice to wrap up the presentation.
Okay.
So yeah, this is the summary of my presentation. Okay. How to re-energize? Always start with shukr. Doors for solution will open. Always put all your energy into the areas within your control. Have some sense of humor. Music, hobbies can help in your free time. And always get help if you are in need. Remember that the strongest of trees are the people. Treat your job as a calling, not just a mere job and duties. One day, all this will pass, and you will look out for each other and be together. We each. Sorry, I think I will just replay that. Sorry. How to re-energize? Always start with shukr. Doors for solution will open. Always put all your energy into the areas within your control. Have some sense of humor. Music or hobbies can help in your free time. And always get help if you are in need. Remember that the strongest of trees are the deepest of roots. Treat your job as a calling, not just a mere job and duties. One day, all this will pass and you will leave to town. Never be imprisoned by your hatred towards people or the situation. Be sensible and rational, as all solutions are there. Always look out for each other and be together. We each live in a borrowed body on the borrowed time and will return it in good time. And in this pandemic, there is no emergency, and you can't save everyone's life, not even a prophet. This is just a chapter of life, and God is making your story interesting. After rain, there can be a rainbow. You will not have everything, but you will have enough. Okay, so with that, I thank the organizer for the opportunity to share, and I wish a great, good, positive mental health for all our, not just the frontliners, but everyone out there who are listening to this presentation. I believe you deserve to have good and positive mental health that's a right for everyone. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dato, for all your sharings. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to the experiences and will be able to handle a lot of issues in the future better with all the informative tips given by Dato earlier. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. All right, let's get going to the third presenter of the day for this morning. Our third presenter is Dr. Kit Tai Soo Kiat. He earned his PhD in psychology from University Islamic Antarabangsa Malaysia and a Master of Education Counselling and Guidance from University Putra Malaysia. He is currently working in Institute Jantung Negara as a patient counsellor, providing psychosocial supports for patients, families, and staffs. Moreover, he plays multiple roles such as champion of patient-centered care. Dr. Kit is an ex-officio member from Mercy Malaysia, part of mental health and psychosocial support team. His journey with Mercy Malaysia started since the MH370 response year 2013. And then he was also deployed to multiple missions, including the Mercy Psychosocial Hotline response to COVID Malaysia. Dr. Kit specializes in healthy psychology, humanitarian work, grief, bereavement, and crisis intervention. Without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Kit Tai to present on supporting second victims in healthcare. Dr. Kit, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Divya. Before I start, I just want to make sure, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, can hear.
Thank you. Okay. Let me share my slide. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Keith. As Dr. Divya mentioned just now, I'm the ESCO member from Mercy Malaysia, and also I'm the counseling psychologist.
Dr. Kit, sorry, Dr. Kit, can't really hear you. Very soft, Dr. Kit. No, doctor. Dr. Kit, we still can't hear you.
One, two, three, four.
Sorry, Dr. Kit, cannot hear. To all the participants, just bear with us. So sorry. Now can hear, but very muffled. Now can hear.
Now can hear. Okay. Sorry for the technical issue. Let me share my slide again. Okay, thank you for introductions, Dr. Divya just now. So for my topics for today, this is about supporting second victim in healthcare. But before for this workshop, I wish to have more interactive sessions. So I wish participants is able to respond to the chat box. So before I start, can I know whether you have heard about the terms of second victim before? For those who have heard, probably you can type yes, and then for those who haven't heard about this, then probably you can type no. Sekarang tak dengar lagi ke?
Can hear, but the quality is quite bad. Got echo.
Okay.
Dr. Kit, do you need about 5 to 10 minutes break? Maybe we can just have a short break while you sort out your audio.
Okay, I think we can do so. Sorry for technical issue.
Okay, no worries.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk. Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk. Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk. Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk. Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk. Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk. Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk. Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat.
Adakah anda okey?
Let's talk. Minda sihat. Hai, stresnya. Hei, kenapa? Cuba cerita.
Let's talk.
Segannya nak cerita. Hai, kita kan kawan baik. Ceritalah.
Let's talk.
Hai, boleh abang bantu?
Yes, biar abang uruskan. Let's talk.
Sorry, my testing. I try my best to do handle. I'm not sure whether this is okay for you all.
It's a little bit better, but still not very loud.
I think Dr. Kit can speak a bit louder. It's clear, but it's very soft.
My apology for that.
Sorry for technical issue. I think so far. Okay. I think I try to do that. It is. I try to present with my phone, but I will share the slide here. Is it okay?
Yes, doctor, should be okay for you to share the slides.
Can you hear me right now?
Can hear Dr. Kit.
Minimize the echo. Testing. How about right now? Can you hear me? Is it with echo?
Much better, Dr. Kit. This is much better.
Thank you
Dr.
very
Kit,
much.
but you are echoing. So maybe if your phone or any devices you keep away from your computer.
Okay.
Then otherwise, I think it should be all right.
Okay. How about right now?
Clearer.
Clearer.
Good
Okay,
to go,
thank you.
yes.
Okay, sorry for all the technical issue. I have multiple trials yesterday, but this technical issue happened again. Okay, my name is Keith. I'm the ESCO member from Muslim Malaysia and also counseling psychologist in Institut Jantung Negara. So for today, I would like to share about the topics of supporting on second victim in healthcare, because there's a lot of people, what I heard from healthcare is seems like doesn't very clear on what is second victim. So I want to have a very quick feedback from everyone here from the chat box. Have you all heard about the terms of second victims? If let's say yes, probably you all can tap yes. If let's say no, probably you all can tap no. Because this term has appeared for around 20 years in healthcare, I just want to check how many healthcare providers in Malaysia heard about this term before?
Can you just repeat the question, Dr. Keith?
Has anyone of you here heard about the terms of second victim? Okay, I think probably for some of the technical issue here, so probably I will just proceed here with the introduction of second victim first. So actually for this, I would like to start with the story, how these terms of second victims appear. There is a nurse called Kimberly here. She is a nurse, professional nurse for 24 years. So for this nurse, actually she worked in the sector children hospital. So according to the comments, she is a very nice nurse, and then she have don't have any issue, work ethical issue before. And then suddenly there is one event for these nurses happened in the year of 2010, which is state as a medical area. So for this medical area, unfortunately, this happened to 5-year-old children. And then this medical area, this nurse has dispersed 1.4 grams of wrong medications instead of 140 milligrams. And then this patient unfortunately has passed away. So this is a very severe event. And then unfortunately, the management or organizations here, they have dismissed this nurse from the job. And then this is a very sad event for this nurse. And then unfortunately, this nurse has committed suicide after 7 months after the event. And then this has shown in all the news that the nurse has suicide after the tragedies of the medical errors. And then this has come into the concept of second victims. So for this one, I would like to, for the objective of today's trainings, I want to introduce on the concept of second victims. And then what is the, to discuss what is the impact of being involved in the adverse event or patient safety events as a healthcare providers. And also, how are we able to reinforce or support the staff that is involved in the patient safety incidents or sentinel events? So, if let's say that is a second, if let's say there's an issue happening in our healthcare system, usually there will be two sets of, actually more than two sets of victims. So as you can see here, there are two sets of victims after a system failure or a human errors that lead to the injuries. And then and often we have not done a very good job in helping others. So the first group of victims is patients and their family. And then the second victims is usually the healthcare workers involved in the incidents. Of course, there are third victims, which is organizations. Usually the organizations is the third victims. And this is the terms that have coined by Dr. Albert Wood in the year 2000. So, that's the things why there is the second victims, and then how this term has come about. So, like I mentioned just now, this term is quite a famous term in overseas, and then this has there are many papers published over here, but unfortunately, it is not that famous, or a lot of healthcare provider doesn't heard about second victims, or they are not sure they are the second victims. Of course, recently there's a paper say that instead of second victims, we need to empower them to tell them different terms such as frontliner warriors. But this one we will describe further. So for the definitions here, is health care practitioners. Second definition is a healthcare practitioners who was involved in an anticipatory adverse event, or also patient-centered events, medical errors, and also patient-related injury. And then after that, they has become victimized, and then the practitioner is traumatized by the events. So this is the definition of second victims. So although that there are not much paper published over here, do you all know that, do you all think that in Malaysia, do we have this issue on second victims? This one I would like to hear from in the chat box as well. Do you all feel that Malaysia is having this issue on second victims? So you all feel that, okay, that is yes. Probably some you all feel that there's no issue. Okay. Okay. So thank you for those who have responding. So for this second, if let's say we are trying to see on the case of medical negligence, unfortunately in Malaysia, there are not much data published in the medical negligence and also the patient safety events. The best I can search here is back into the year of 2019, our previous health ministry have said that some of the case of medical negligences. So as you can see here, so over the 3 years, the numbers of burn surgery have increased from 6 cases to 11, and then the URFOs, unintended retended foreign object, have went up from the 27 cases to 32 cases, and then the transfusion errors have went from the 40 cases to the 47 cases, and then there are also many cases on the medication errors. So there are also other issues on patient falls, and then also cases involved with children. So there are many cases of unsafe care, and then which, as you can see here, 83% is considered preventable. So from our previous health ministry, yes, contributed to these incidents that it is ineffective communications, lack of teamwork, heavy workload, staff fatigue, and then failure to follow on the procedure, and then usage of shortcut. So as you can see here, in Malaysia, we have quite a number of cases that they are involved on medical negligence. Usually, unfortunately, what I heard from quite a number of cases under me, they doesn't receive sufficient support in these situations. So this has caused the issue of stress, burnout, and then this is also causing a lot of technical issues. So why do we need to support on this model? Because I mean on this stuff, because a lot of unfortunately I heard from some of the management, they have done some mistake, and then they receive the punishments, and then why should we support the second victims in the healthcare? So I believe that most of you have gone through this Swiss models of error in the healthcare. So if let's say a medical error happens, a patient harm happens, at the event, the healthcare provider shouldn't be the only one who are being blamed, because once a medical error happens, there are multiple factors. There can be factors, of course, in the providers because of distraction, practice, lack of training. There might be issue in terms of team, technical issue, poor design. There are issues in organizational cultures, resource and funding. So as you can see here, they are like the Swiss model. They might need to go through multiple areas before the patient harm caused to the patients. So which means that it's not only the how should I put it? It's not only the responsibility should be only to the staff. The staff is also a victim, and then the staff is also requires certain support. But like I mentioned just now, most of the time I doesn't really hear about supporting on the staff, because as you can see here, a lot of staff, they will receive punishments, and then they just so-called have a finger pointing. So this is not considered as a very healthy phenomenon or healthy conditions. So here is, I believe that in health, as a human being, even though as a professional, so we tend to make mistakes. So again, here I want to hear from you all in the chat box that if let's say you all have made a serious mistake in the healthcare, usually what is in your mind? What is what do you think or what do you feel when you are having a very when you have made a severe mistake in the healthcare? So can y'all so I hope that y'all can listen to hear me, and then whether there's any response from you all if let's say you all have made a serious mistake in the healthcare, or probably I should type in the chat box. Some is feeling guilty. Okay, thank you for the response. For the others, any other response? Any when you are making serious mistake, especially linked to patient safety events, and then some of the patients might be affected. So any issue or anything, what is the things that is in your mind? Okay. I just wish that you can undo on the mistake. Feel like want to jump from the 10th floor. Yeah, this is something that we are concerned because we hope that this mistake doesn't happen. Thank you for those who have responded. Fear of losing job. Yeah, this is something that is we are afraid of the investigations, and then they say that this is our mistake, and then we need to bear the consequences. So I think this is a few important points. Thank you for those who have responded. So, but before we go into the signs and symptoms and then the progress, usually what do all the second victims have in common? Usually, they are having these issues like feeling guilty, they want to undo on the mistake. Actually, because first, they have a deep personal commitment to the patient safety or welfare for other human beings, which means that they care about other patients. And then also, second victim is in the healthcare system, we know that this is a very high levels of complexity. Often we require a very rapid fire decision making, and then at the same time, sometimes we have faced a limited knowledge and also a significant unknowns. So this is one of the contribution factors, and then why we tend to make a medical errors. This is the similar concerns. So if let's say we try to see on what is happening in the survey from one of the surveys in overseas, they have called this as an MIPSS event. After this is what we call as medically induced trauma support service. This is the support survey. So when they are they try to survey what happened after the event. So they have found that like 76 of the healthcare provider, they feel that memories of what happened to the patient keep troubling me for a long time after the event. So which means that they cannot cope with the memories. And then of course there's 8% they feel that they don't know, and there's 60% that they strongly disagree, they are able to move on. So, and then 75% they have worried a lot about what my clinical peers they would think about me after the event, whether they feel that yeah, this stuff is incompetence, I cannot trust this stuff anymore, and then I try to isolate, and then I try to so-called stigmatize my staff, be stigmatized. So this is something that 75% the staff will be concerned. And then from here is after a while after the event, I still feel that some of my clinical colleagues, this is linked with the previous conditions, which means that even though after a while my colleagues still having issue with me, there were times that I feel less able to work safely and effectively because of what happened. So because of these events, I'm questioning myself about the competency, and then whether I'm able to work safely, whether I'm able to work effectively. So this there are 54% have strongly agreed that I feel that I'm not able to work safely at this moment. And then the good part is there are 61% they know how to get the support from the institute, but unfortunately, even though they know how to get the support, they are also issue on stigmatizations, and then they say that I will feel embarrassed to seek for the psychological support after the event. And then this is also one of the issues that it faces in a lot of institutes, even in Malaysia. So this is something that for me, I'm concerned, and then this is something that we need to look into. So there are, like I mentioned just now, when I try to look into the Journal of Second Victim in Malaysia, just guess how many journals or papers I found about second victim in Malaysia? Zero. If I say someone have some of the papers that I have missed out, you all can feel free to message me. But so far, unfortunately, second victim is important, phenomenon is important. They need support, but unfortunately, in Malaysia, seems like our healthcare system that doesn't acknowledge and also doesn't support on the on our healthcare provider in this aspect. And then, as you can see here, several studies have confirmed that 10 to 43% of healthcare team members, they have the second victim symptoms after the adverse event. And then they are in US and Canada, even in overseas in the year of 2015, there are 90% of physicians, they feel that the healthcare organizations fail to support their healthcare providers after the adverse event. I'm not sure how many percent in Malaysia now, because a lot of them, a lot of us doesn't even heard about the terms of second victims. So even though in overseas, there are growing awareness on the second victim support program. Yep, they are having quite a number of programs to support on the second victims. And then, but for this program, currently they are still need to see the effectiveness, the effectiveness of the organization support. So there are still quite a number of research published description on second victims, and then they are still having issue in terms of successful development, implementation, and evaluations. So I think this is what is happened in overseas right now, and then unfortunately it's worse in Malaysia. So what might happen to second victims, and then this from a research publications, this is one of the stage of the second victim syndromes that they are potentially we might go through. So there are 6 stages. So the first stages is chaos and accident response, which means that once we found out that we are having these severe medical errors, so we will first have a great state of disturbance, confusion, and or uncertainty, and then we might question ourselves that how and why did this happen? And then this is something that is a chaotic response, and then our mind cannot think straight. And then this is something I believe that a lot of people might have this situation before. And then in the stage 2, it is intrusive reactions, which means that by definition here, this is a period of hunted reenactment, often with the feelings of internal inadequacy and also the periods of self-isolations. We might keep on thinking about the incidents, and then we might keep on questioning ourselves that how did I miss this? And then could it have been prevented? And then this is our mind keep on thinking about the incidents. We might have a sleepless night, and then we might having the issue of so-called questioning us over and over again. So this is on the stage 2 on intrusive reactions. So in the stage 3, about the restoring personal integrity. So like I have mentioned just now, they are having concern about their reputations and acceptance within the workplace. So this is 2 interrelated issue, and then they might think about questioning themselves that what other people might think about me. Will I ever be trusted again? How much trouble am I in? And then this one is about the immediate stages on the reputation and acceptance in the workplace. And also in the stage 4, enduring on the inquisitions, they are, like we mentioned, like some of the participants have mentioned just now, and then they will begin to focus on the potential impact of affecting on the job security, whether they have able to continue their licensure, whether there are any issue on the future litigations, whether I'm able to promote again. So this one is the 4th stage, and then this is also one of the stage that we are, we have seen in the participants' response as just now. And then in the stage 5, so here, some of the participants, if let's say they are able to get sufficient support, they will try to obtain some emotional aids, which means that if let's say they are having good support from the work, family, so they will tend to have a safe place to recover from the events. And also this is the areas that how they are trying to seek for help. So in the stage 3, in the stage 6, moving on. So there are 3 different possibilities, whether they are trying to drop out, or they are trying to survive or thrive. So if let's say they for some of the healthcare provider, they cannot forgive themselves, and then they are so-called unable to get through the mistake. They feel that, oh, better I don't need, I'm not able to contribute on this professional. Better I try to move on to another service. And then there are some of the healthcare providers. It's like, okay, now I'm able to survive. I'm able to cope at this moment. Of course, sometimes I'm not able to forgive myself at this moment, and then I'm not able to let go yet. But at least I'm able to cope, and then I'm considered as surviving. So, of course, the best situations that we are able to achieve here is craft, which means that how are we able to learn from the mistake, and then how are we able to gain the insight, learn from the situation, so that we are able to become a better person. So this is the areas that we are hoping to achieve. But there are, of course, the first situations that we are afraid of is some of the issue that they might having some mental health issues. And then there are cases that we have mentioned just now, like self-harm, suicide. This is something that we are really worried about our healthcare professionals. So this is also something that I think we should prevent burnout based on this medical error and also medical situations. I'm not going too fast. So let us focus on the what are the signs and symptoms of the secondary themes. Of course, there are short-term impact and then there are long-term impact. So for the short-term impact, this is the normal reaction. And then like, of course, when we are making a very huge medical errors, we will feel shocked, we will feel helpless, we will feel worry, sadness, anger, guilt, and then we feel that we are inadequate, we are insufficient. And then at a short period of times, we might have poor concentrations, memories, having some intrusive thoughts and nightmares, and then having some sleep disturbance. This is completely normal if, let's say, we are having these medical errors on the symptom of secondary themes. But what we are concerned here is these signs and symptoms can be linked in could be proceed into long-term issue, which they might this symptom is a bit similar like acute stress disorder and PTSD. They might having some recurrent experience of event, avoidance, emotional numbness, hyperarousal, and then withdrawal, depressive symptoms, impact social functioning, and also affected personal and professional relationship. And what we have concerned just now is, like I mentioned just now, self-harm and suicide. This is something that we are concerned in terms of the long-term of signs and symptoms. So what is the issue cause this secondary themes, and then what is the issue that we might need to be aware? So for our based on the research, we can find that these predispositional factors, unfortunately, blame culture is one of the major issues that contribute to the secondary themes. I think this is one of the questions that are asked by some of the participants on people, and then this is something on the organizational cultures. So as you can see here, the blame culture has been found as a significant source of the medical errors that lead to the poor patient outcome. And then the definition of blame culture is an unsupportive culture that reduces on the quality patients' care, result in the decreased outcome, and also increase of medical errors. So this is some of the organizations that are finger pointing, and then they are not willing to accept the responsibilities for making a mistake, and then they are fear of punishment, criticism, separation from employment. So that's why they are a lot of healthcare providers. If let's say they are in this culture, they are being blamed for the mistake because they are blamed. They put their blame that they don't have a good judgments. They are careless. They are negligent. But like I mentioned just now, this is not helpful in order to support on the second victim, and then this might make the situation worse. So the positive cultures that organizations should adopt is the culture of safety, or what we call as just culture. So the culture of safety here is, this is a positive culture that it is the leadership is spread and promote the atmosphere of trust, that we are encouraged reporting the errors so that we are able to benefit from the data. But at the same time, this just culture is a non-punitive culture of safety. So we recognize that humans are prone to errors, and then if let's say these errors are not intentional, so we should seek for the system and process improvement, but not just to blame on the healthcare providers. So if let's say we are having this culture of safety and just culture, the healthcare provider will feel more comfortable in reporting the errors, and then this will help the leaders to understand and responsible on the and accountable for the system improvement and following on the adverse event. So this is on the organizational cultures. So if let's say based on the second victims, what if let's say we are second victims, actually what is the rights that we have? So based on the paper published in the year of 2007, we have the right of so-called trust. We have such rights if let's say we are having a second victims. So the first one is key is treatment that is just, which means that we should be avoid being stigmatizations. Second victim should be treated as to be in respect, which means that we should avoid on the blaming, shaming cultures. We should have the understanding and compassion, which means that as a healthcare provider, we shouldn't be abandoned. And then for supportive care, all the second victims should be access to appropriate support service. And then last but not least, which is the transparency and opportunity to contribute, which means that we should contribute to the culture of learning. So this is the 5 rights that the second victims should have. So let us talk about the model of second victim support. How can we support on second victims? So this is one of the paper published in the University of Missouri Healthcare, which they have performed quite a number of literature reviews, and then they have introduced one of the models called 3-tier integrated model of interventional support. So this is the support that we have. So for these 3-tier models, which means that there are 3 different levels that we are able to support on second victims. One is department level, one is trained peer supporters, and then one is expedite referral network. So of course, most of the support, department support is the majority that we are, if a lot of healthcare provider, if let's say they get the support from departments, they will be okay. But some they might need to escalate to peer support, the trained peer supporters, and then some 10% they might need to expedite to the referral system that need more professional mental health support. So let's go through one by one. So for the local departmental support, this is of course like we mentioned just now, we would wish to have a supportive culture, just culture, and also culture of safety instead of blaming cultures. So for the first year, for the department, they should be able to provide a positive support. So in order for the departments to provide a positive support, so we should have educations about the concept on second victims. How are we able to identify on second victims? How are we able to provide the essential support and also the referral process to the higher level of support warranted? So this is the how are we able to support on the department second victim for in the department level. And then for the tier 2 is a peer supporters, because a lot of staff they think that I know that I need to support on the staff, but I don't know what to do. So here it is good to have a trained peer supporters and support individuals, especially for those who are involved in the patient safety officers, the risk management, They know how to provide one-to-one care, peer supervision, team debriefings. So we are able to support them in a different pathway, and then they are trained to know how to provide the support to them. So based on this program, it is good to have like each unit or each department, we have around 10% of the staff is trained as the peer supporters. If let's say they are we know that they are someone having issue on certain event, patient safety issue, how are we able to support on the staff? And then of course, if let's say for the peer support, they are also having issue on not sure how to handle, then we will move on to the external referral, which of course some of the hospital, they will work with the employee assistance program. Some they will try to refer to psychiatric, clean site, counselor, social worker, chaplaincy. And then this one is to ensure the availability on and expected access for the professional support. So this is for the tier 3 support. So of course, in Malaysia, that's also a very interesting service that I think I want to bring your attention is Clinical Active Malaysia consultation service. So which means that for some of the workers, healthcare workers, they have the clinical, their issue of ethical dilemma, they are not sure what to do. This is one of the platform of tertiary service that they are able to provide a free, confidential, independent clinical consultants. This group have include all the consultant, medical consultants, lawyers, and they are all qualified to provide a service for clinical ethics. And then what the employers can do. Now we are trying to talking about different levels, what employers can do, on supporting on the second victims. So for the employers, they should be aware on this issue on mental health issue on second victims, and then they should modify on the risk factor for stress, able to develop on the organizational climate to promote on their well-being, and then facilitate access for the healthcare referral system for employees who need it. And then sometimes we need to be more understanding and flexible on the needs of employee, and also try to combat on the stigma and encourage open discussion in the workplace on the mental health and also second victims. And then what the employees, if let's say they are second victims, what they can do. I think in this whole day, you all will learn about a lot of self-care tips, how to practice resiliency and self-care, seek help when you need, maintain on your social network, engage in regular exercise, talk with your employers about the mental health needs. Know your right. I think you all will have been more descriptions on this part. And then for our, if let's say our colleagues is having this issue, I think it's good that we are able to make it clear that our intentions that we want to help, listen without judgment, and also try to encourage them to seek for professional help when they are ready. So if let's say you think that this your colleague is in immediate danger, I think don't leave it alone, and then you need to try to guide them to seek professional help as soon as possible, and then try to stay in touch to track how the person is coping. So, like I mentioned just now, recently they find this term of second victim is a bit not really encouraging and empowerment. So, one of the research paper in this year is they are trying to encourage whether we can change the terms of second victims to a frontliner warriors, so that we are able to help the healthcare providers to feel and acknowledge on their feelings, and then we are able to help them to notice what is their value, give them space to support them, guide them to the personal meanings, and also try to help them to take part on what is their job. So this is how they are trying to empower the second victim into the frontliner warriors. But this research is still ongoing. And then in summary, for the problem of second victims, and then this is our rights, like we mentioned just now. We should be, they are having the rights for avoid stigmatizations. We should avoid on the blaming, shaming. We should provide more understanding and compassion. They should access to the appropriate supportive care. And also, we should all involve in the transparency and opportunity to contribute. This is part of the cultural learning. So before I end to proceed with the Q&A sessions, I think my apology for the technical errors. I think this is also one of the good demonstrations that stress management during crisis at this moment. Thank you for your understanding. Okay, So, Dr. Divya, anything that you all want to comment or anything that I missed up?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Keith, for your sharings on this particular topic, especially when it comes to second-hand victim. Okay, Dr. Keith, we have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Keith, can you explain to us on what would be Mercy's role in supporting second-hand victims?
Actually, for me, I have more, how to say that? I have more referral and role in my own institute in the National IJN Institute Tanjung Negara. So that's why I receive more referrals over there. And then my role here in Mercy Malaysia as EXCO member in this form is I'll try to promote the awareness and then try to acknowledge that this is part of the populations that need to require help. And then we will also link to, of course, in our Mercy Malaysia, we have a helpline, Mercy helpline that you all will able to seek for help if let's say that is a need. But this, my role here is basically two. One is promote on the awareness, and then the second one is try to promote on how we are able to help this second victim. And then the third one is where are we able to, where can they seek for help if let's say there's a need. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, and Dr. Kit, can you share with us any of your experiences in this pandemic moment? With regards to second-hand victims.
Yeah, I think there are some of the, okay, let me think about it because there are some is related to P&C issue. So I need to see what is the appropriate case to share.
Something common and something all of us could relate to maybe.
I think, okay, for me, something that is very common is some of the healthcare providers, they have, as you know, COVID-19 is now very common. And then they are, unfortunately, some of the healthcare providers, they are the carriers for themselves. And then this, unfortunately, this healthcare provider has passed the COVID to some of our patients in some of the organizations. And then unfortunately, the patients doesn't end well, and then having a lot of issue, deterioration, and then unfortunately, the patient cannot make it. And then this is also linked to the, again, stigmatizations and also the issue for staff as well. How come this happened? And then blaming cultures. And then this is how are we able to support on the, this is why we are concerned, because some of the organizations might not recognize this is a system issue, not individuals. And then how are we able to do the preventions? Is not, we shouldn't have a blaming culture to the particular staff, but we should improve on the whole system.
Understood. Okay, all right. From the participants, are there any other questions for Dr. Keith? Okay, I think that's all for today in terms of questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Keith, for your sharings. Of course, technical issues happen. It's something that we all are used to with this current modern technology, kan? All right. So I think we have learned a lot of soft skills today from Dr. Keith with regards to second-hand victim. As all of us, I think almost all of us would have gone through that period where we would have made mistakes and how to feel about it, how to go about it, and the stages that we have gone through as well. I think now it's better after Dr. Keith has explained, we would be able to not only help ourselves but also to help our fellow healthcare workers who are fighting this pandemic together. So thank you so much, Dr. Keith. With that, I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers for this morning, Dr. Muhammad Hafiz, Dr. Al-Zamani, and also Dr. Keith. So now let us take our lunch break and we shall resume back at 2 p.m. with more exciting topics to be shared. So stay tuned and we'll see you back at 2 p.m. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Sorry for the technical issue again. Take care,
No
everyone.
problem. Thank you.